I worked part-time as a search and rescue officer for the better part of a decade off and on. It started as something just to do in the summers during college. I just needed some gigs that made me feel useful. It got me into the hills that I grew up in and looked pretty damn good on my resume. But I stuck with it longer than I ever really meant to. I did it well into my 30s, even after my day job and maintenance took up most of my time. Something about it just kept pulling me back. I liked being needed. I liked the challenge of it. Most calls were nothing. Some hiker would twist an ankle a mile off the trail. A teenager would get separated from the family reunion. A dog had accidentally fallen down a wash and would not come back up. But every now and again, you get one that would twist your gut in a way that you can't really explain. There is a spot in our country that everybody on the team dreads. I am not going to name it out of respect for the families, and because honestly, I don't want anybody thinking it's some kind of a challenge. Let's just say it's a far corner of the national park, a dense stretch of land that doesn't get much foot traffic unless people are lost or looking to be, a tangle of thicket and game trails, nothing marked or cleared. No roads in or out, except for one old maintenance path that's mostly used by deer. Every single time we get a call there, it feels off. And I'm not saying like the place is cursed or something, but I will say this. When people go missing in that zone, it usually stays that way. We have pulled bodies from cliff sides and riverbeds. We have found hikers dehydrated and half mad crawling towards the sun. But that area, that stretch of woods, it's like a mouth that swallows people whole. There is never any real clear sign. No trail, no final clue. They just simply vanish. I have seen seasoned guys on our team get turned around out there like greenhorns. GPS is glitching, radios going out, even dogs just straight up refusing to track. One time, we lost contact with the 3-man search team for nearly 6 hours. They were maybe 2 miles out and could not explain what happened when we finally found them. They said it felt like time skipped. They said they were walking and suddenly it was dark. The call came in at around 6:40 p.m. on a Wednesday in the early fall of 2011. An older couple had been reported missing by their daughter after they failed to return her messages all day long. They'd checked in with her mid-morning before setting out on a hike through the national park. It was what should have been a casual 3-hour loop. And then she told us she had not heard from them since then. Rangers located their vehicle parked nearby the west entrance. The windows cracked a bit and maps were still folded up in the glove box. They had signed in at the trailhead registry, but they had not signed out. By the time we were mobilized and briefed, they had been unaccounted for nearly 12 hours. We all figured the exact same thing. It was probably a bad fall or a twisted knee, and they could not get back and get help. Maybe the husband tried to go for help and then got turned around. These weren't kids, and they were in their 70s. The wife had a replacement knee, if I remember rightly. The sun was already low when we met up at base, so we planned for a 2-hour sweep, just enough to catch any signs before full dark. I got paired with an ex-army guy who didn't say much, but had an eye for the terrain. We were tasked with Sector 5, a winding stretch near the ridgeline. Guess where that was? Right on the border of the bad zone that I told you about. The search started like any other, quiet and focused, headlamps on, radios chirping. We kept to the path at first, calling their names every few minutes, pausing to listen. You can hear a twig snap from a mile off out here. It was dead quiet, no owls, no frogs, not even the wind. An hour or so in, the reports started coming through. No bodies, no sightings, just stuff. Some of the guys found an old backpack half covered in leaves. The tags were sun-bleached and the zipper was rusted. Inside were granola wrappers and a moldy paper bag. They definitely did not belong to the missing couple. Then later, someone called in about a torn flannel jacket tangled up on a branch. Downhill from that, she found a pair of old hiking boots with no laces. Again, not our people, but really weird. Then my partner and I came across something worse. We found a campsite, but it was not the couple's. This one had very clearly been there for a while. The tarp was half rotted, and the sleeping bag was wet and sunken into the earth, like it had grown there itself. There was a rustic camping stove still set up like somebody just got up and walked away. Next to it, half buried under pine needles, was this Polaroid photo. It was faded and water damaged, but you could still make out a face. It was a kid of maybe 16 years old. They had a big grin on their face, wearing braces, and they were holding up a fish. On the back, in marker, it said, Benny, 1997. My partner did not say anything. He just handed it to me and kept on walking, but I could tell from the way his flashlight was jittering that he was actually spooked. We reported the sight and continued moving on. By the time we rejoined the main trail, nearly everybody else had found something else. They had found pieces of gear, single gloves, shattered glasses, broken walkie-talkies, etc. But no one had found any people, and none of the stuff matched the missing couple. It felt like the woods were coughing up junk from the last decade. We gathered near the North Fork, where we heard voices up ahead. It was a low muttering. It did not sound like it was coming from any radio. I thought maybe it was a couple and picked up my pace. I started calling out, "Hello? Search and rescue." But when we got close, it was not them. Two men stood just off the trail, near a bend in the brush. Both of them were really filthy. They were dressed in layered camo and flannels. Their skin was covered in grime and what looked like soot too. One of them had a gnarled beard full of burrs. The other was taller, with long grey hair pulled back into a tight ponytail. They watched us approach without moving. "You fellas seen anybody come through here?" my partner asked. "We're looking for an elderly couple. Been gone about a half day." The taller one spoke first. "Ain't seen nobody but you," he said, then glanced up at the trees. "Just some squirrels." "You guys out trapping or what?" I asked, trying to keep things friendly. "Got a permit?" He nodded slowly. "All legal. Traps staked and flagged. You can check." I noticed the smaller man kept shifting behind a tree, like he didn't want to be seen clearly. There was a smell too, like meat had gone bad in the sun. They didn't look homeless exactly, but something was definitely off about them. I think it was their eyes, maybe. I think they just didn't blink enough. They weren't carrying any packs either. No gear, no food, and no water. Just a long curved knife on the belt of the shorter one. "If you do see anybody, alive or otherwise, please let one of the rangers know," I said. The bearded one smiled back. His teeth were yellow and spaced weirdly. "We'll be sure to holler at you," he said. Then they turned and disappeared into the trees without another word. We radioed in, described them as best as we could, but there was no law against being weird. They were just gone before anybody else could intercept. I looked back and I swear, I could not hear a single footstep as they moved off. They were just gone, like they vanished. The mood just clearly shifted after that. We kept at the grid, but everybody got quieter. Nobody wanted to split up again, at least not really. The signs of the couple were nowhere, but more odd things kept turning up. We found a cracked watch. We found a half-burned driver's license with no name visible. We also found a blood-stained bandana. We just kept on finding random shit and too much of it. Eventually, the call came through to pull back for the night. We would regroup and get the dogs first thing in the morning. Everybody was accounted for. There were no injuries, but morale was low. Nobody said it out loud, but we were all thinking the same thing. This was not going to end with a warm reunion and a chopper ride out. It was already over. We just did not know how bad it was yet. As we hiked out, my partner muttered, "You ever see gear that old out here before?" I shook my head. Not that much of it, and not like that. He didn't say anything else, just kept looking over his shoulder every few minutes, like something was following us in the dark. We were back on trail at first light. Fog still hung between the trees like gauze. It was thick enough to make our headlamps useless for that first hour. The dogs were brought in, but they did not track well. They kept getting distracted and sniffing off in odd directions. Then they would be whining and sitting down like they were tired before they had even started. One of the handlers muttered something underneath his breath. They really do not like this place. Around mid-morning, we pushed into the part of the woods that had not been gritted yet. Thick canopy, and it was weirdly quiet. I spotted something shiny ahead and called it out to the others. It turned out to be a metal thermos. It was still upright, like somebody just set it down. Next to it was a fleece jacket, folded neatly. The color and the size matched the wife's description. Then came the real horror. 20 yards away from there, we found something. It was buried underneath a scatter of ferns and rotted leaves. We found what looked like a blanket until we turned it over. It was a half-torn piece of a rainfly, soaked in blood, still wet at the edges. Nearby were eyeglasses snapped in half, and a hiking pole with a streak of what looked like flesh caught up in the tip. It wasn't just 1 or 2 drops. We are talking a pool of it, sprayed out across the brush and trailing towards one of the bases of the trees. Immediately, we fanned out, calling their names, but nothing. There was no movement anywhere nearby. There was not even birds chirping. It was just that creeping dread that something terrible had gone down here, and it happened recently. My partner found this shredded pack stuffed into a hollow stump. Inside was a woman's driver's license, her name matching the report, a fistful of granola bars still inside the side pocket, and a water bottle half full. Why leave all of that behind? Then came the trap. Kenny stepped too close to a pine and set it off. A spike board, camouflaged and rigged to fall from above, came down. It missed his skull by inches, but tore through his arm and embedded into the ground. We got him stabilized and evac'd out pretty quickly, but after that, nobody wanted to stay. We were search and rescue operators, not infantry. This was no longer a rescue. It was something else entirely. That night, the operation got scaled back. Rangers swept the area, found 2 more traps, and shut it all down. They never officially said it was the trappers that we met, but we all knew. The problem was, they never found those guys again. There was no cabin, no camp, no names on file. It was like they never even existed. The couple was declared and presumed dead after 3 weeks. Their bodies were never found. Just some blood, gear, and that overwhelming feeling that we were being watched the whole damn time that we were out there. Occasionally, people will ask why I quit search and rescue, and I don't really say much. I just tell them it was the time. Truth is, those woods took something from me, and I still think about those men, mud-covered, staring from behind the trees. Where the hell did they go, and what were they doing out there? Hey, hope you've enjoyed the story so far. If you want to hear more, make sure to subscribe, like the video, and leave a comment because it lets YouTube know you like the content and helps more people to see these videos. My next big goal for the channel is 100,000 subscribers, and as a celebration, I will be doing a Q&A video once we hit that goal. Thank you, and back to the stories. I did 1 season of search and rescue. I like the challenge of hiking through rough country with a pack on my back and a reason to do it. At first, it really felt like it was my calling, but that kind of wore off fast. This season hit me harder than I really thought it was going to. I definitely did not expect the emotional whiplash. 1 minute, you're laughing your ass off with your crew on the trail. The next, you are bagging a body that's been half-eaten by coyotes. I remember the first time we found someone barely alive, slumped over a log like a wet rag. We brought him in, got him stable, and he kept crying, sobbing like a kid because he had convinced himself he was going to die out there. You see somebody like that, and you start wondering how thin the line really is between the ones who make it out and the ones who don't. I started having trouble sleeping too. Out of all of the calls that we ran into that season, there is one that I still think about a lot more than I should. It was late fall, just before the weather turns into real winter. We got a call about a group of climbers stuck up on a high peak. It was the tallest point in the county. This was not supposed to be anything unusual. They were experienced climbers, well prepared. They were just caught off by a surprise storm. It happens a lot more often than you think it does. We figured that we would reach them, stabilize whoever needed it, then get them moving downhill. Just routine stuff. But that mission did not go the way that it was supposed to go. Something went very wrong up there, and to this day, I am not sure I understand what we really walked into. We got the call at 12:27 p.m. They triggered their emergency beacon and followed it up with a frantic call to dispatch. The woman on the line sounded terrified. She said they were trying to descend and that they were cold and lost. She said that one of their teammates had lost his mind. That was the exact phrase she used. He's totally gone off the rails. We don't know what to do. The Rangers pulled out a map of the area, gritted out the last known location, and sent us up. The storm had rolled in, fast and hard. It had not been on any forecast that morning that I saw. It was cold rain at the trailhead, but higher up it was snowing and piling up fast. The highest peak was not a technical climb unless you veered off route, but in a whiteout, you may as well be on Everest. We hiked for a little over 2 hours. We were soaked through, despite every single layer we had on. Half of my fingers were numb. I had a radio clipped to my chest and kept checking for chatter from the missing climbers, but nothing. We just kept on moving. Around the 4-mile mark, we found her, the woman who called for help. She was crouched beneath a boulder overhang, arms wrapped around her knees, face crusted over with ice. Her lips were cracked, her eyes were glassy. When we called out, she flinched like we were about to hit her. It took her a second to even realize that we were not a threat. "Where are the others?" I asked, kneeling beside her. "Are you hurt?" She just shook her head and just said, "Ryan," and then started to cry. We gave her water, wrapped her up in an emergency blanket, and slowly pulled the story out of her while the medic checked her vitals. They had started the climb around 4 in the morning, hoping to summit and descend before dark. At around 10 o'clock, the storm had slammed them, just heavy snow with zero visibility. They turned around and tried to follow their GPS back down, but the cold was setting in way too fast. One of them slipped, and another started panicking. And Ryan got weird. He just stopped talking, she said. He would not answer anybody. He kept looking out at nothing, like he was listening to something that we could not hear. Then, out of nowhere, he just walks away. Not like he was running or scared, but like he was following something. We called out to him, tried to stop him, but he was only 100 yards off and never turned around. He did not acknowledge us at all. He just kept moving down the slope and through the trees like we were not there. Then an hour later he comes back. He no longer had his gloves on. He did not have his hat on either. His ears were blue and he was smiling. The others asked him where he had gone, if he was okay, but he never answered. He sat down in the snow and started to pull his boots off. I told him to stop, she whispered. I begged him, but he took off his socks and then lunged at Parker and bit him really hard. At that point, Erica said she panicked and took off. She ran until her legs gave out. She said she would rather freeze than wait around to see what Ryan was about to do next. At that point I looked at my team, and nobody said it, but we were all thinking the same thing. We might not be dealing with a rescue anymore. We set up for a signal for an air evac to grab the woman, then pushed higher up the trail. We followed her rough directions, but every few minutes we would have to stop and orient ourselves again. That is when we stumbled upon them. Bare footprints, but just feet, no boots or socks. Human toes, frozen and red, peeling deep in the snow. The footsteps were staggered and erratic, like whoever left them was limping or stumbling. There were smears too, dark stains in the snow that we did not want to acknowledge, but it was blood. Some of the blood was still wet. One of the guys radioed in, tracks heading northwest, not very old. We followed them until they vanished near a slope that dropped into a thick pine belt. No sign of a fall, they were just gone. After another mile or so up, we finally found the rest of the climbers. They were huddled under an emergency tarp. 2 of them were conscious. One was unconscious with a nasty head gash. Their cheeks were windburned raw, lips cracked, eyes sunken. One had a bandage across his head, duct taped clumsily. We got them warmed up and stabilized. One of them just kept mumbling to himself, "He's not right. He's not right." They told us Ryan had come back one last time, rushed at them while swinging a rock and hitting the unconscious guy in the face, then screaming something nobody could understand. He tore off his jacket and sprinted off back into the white. Nobody had seen him since. The rest of the operation was just triage and retrieval. We did not go chasing him through the blizzard. It was too dark and too cold. We had injured climbers who would die if we did not get them down fast enough. It didn't make sense to me though. Hypothermia makes people act strange, sure, but this wasn't confusion or fatigue. It was literally like something inside of him broke clean in half. Like he saw or heard something nobody else did, and whatever it was, it took him with it. The climbers got down safely that night somehow. The evac was messy and took hours, but nobody else died. One of them ended up needing surgery on his hand, and the guy with the head wound pulled through, but it took some time, a long time, to get his memory back. None of them ever really gave a straight story about what happened to Ryan either. We did another sweep in the morning after the wind had died down. Still no sign of Ryan though. The barefoot prints did not really lead anywhere. There was no body, no pack, no gear. They found his body in the spring. A hiker spotted it inside this runoff gully, 3,000 feet down from where we last saw him. It was broken in a way that suggested he had fallen hard and fast. His clothes were mostly gone. There was just this thermal shirt, shredded open. No pants on, no boots on, and no signs of any animals. There was just his body, twisted around a boulder like the impact of a dummy. Jaw open, eyes sunken, face half gone. The coroner did not say much in the report. He said it was exposure, blunt force trauma, likely hypothermia-induced psychosis. The guys on our team who saw the scene firsthand said there were footprints around him, like somebody else had stood there, just looking at him. There were no prints leading in or out, just a few in the snowpack. My friend is a volunteer who does search and rescue and that sort of thing in the Australian outback. He is also involved in wildlife rescue, bushfire management, etc. He received a call about a couple of tourists who got it in their heads that they could load up a little rented car with some snacks and tunes and drive it across the Australian bush. Some romantic idea about driving from Western Australia to the Northern Territory looking for kangaroos in their habitat, foraging for native plants as bush tucker. No understanding of the rough terrain, isolation, good luck finding a gas station, and how cold the bush becomes at night. Their friends had not heard from them in a few days. My friend is near Alice Springs, which is one of the locations they could have ended up. It is a lot of ground to cover, but he does his part and spends the day just driving around on dirt roads. He gets past familiar farms into the real outback, just miles of red dust and dry air. He does not find a broken down car, tourists, or anything but endless trees and shrubs. It is getting dark, so he turns around to head home. On his way back, he notices something about one of the low-growing trees he did not discern before. It is hair, human hair. Tufts of blonde hair are twisted around its branches. It is probably too light to be from indigenous people, and there is not a known tribe on that land regardless. He slows down. More hair. At least a dozen trees are decorated with locks of blonde hair, and he can't tell if they are speckled with red dirt or blood. When the gravity of the situation sunk in, he floored it, frantically radioing into the shack in town. He says he probably sounded crazy or drunk. He lived in the country all of his life, but he swears that he will never visit the outback at night again without another volunteer accompanying him. The tourists ended up being found hundreds of kilometers away in Darwin, getting drunk with the locals. They forgot to check in with their friends. The finding was reported to the police, and he said they were as perplexed as anyone else. It was a dead end, and later dismissed as perhaps a practical joke. It's strange to play a joke in the middle of nowhere though, miles away from any town or farm where probably no one is going to see it. I was attached to a TSAR, Technical Search and Rescue, after last year's Hurricane Irma impacted my county. Basically, we were the crews that go out after the winds die down and clear roads and search damaged structures to make sure everyone is okay and to tend to those who are not. My county is one of the largest in the state of Florida, so each team had multiple large grids to search, and that means going up and down every single street in every single neighborhood so that everything is covered and you do not miss anything. So it took all day just to do a couple of grids. At one point, my team had up on a home with a large tree that had fallen onto the roof. Like all the other large trees on roofs in the area, we would walk up, survey the damage, see if anyone is inside, and report it back. Nobody was home, so we just reported it and moved on. We went further down the road, but it was all flooded out, so we had to turn around and come back the way we came, passing the house above. On our way back, the family, parents and 2 young kids, had just gotten back from evacuating further inland, so we stopped and chatted with them for a bit and called in some linemen to take care of their power, since there was a power line that went down in the area. They invited us in to do some paperwork so we could connect them with social services to get them a safe place to stay until their home is sorted out. While inside, we got a closer look at where exactly the tree had fallen. It was right above their kids' shared bedroom. The kids both slept in a bunk bed in a room in the corner of the house where the tree had fallen. The tree in question had a branch which penetrated the roof and the ceiling of the room, and had also gone clean through both the top and the bottom bunks. Had the family not evacuated, and that tree fallen while those kids were in bed, the storm came through overnight in this area. The 2 young children would have been impaled in their sleep, and more than likely lost their lives. They got very lucky by deciding to evacuate, even though they were not in any evacuation or flood zone. After all of the reports were in, overall, our county only had about 500 structures damaged from either wind, debris, or water, so we looked out compared to some of the other parts of the state, and especially since nobody in our county was killed, but we got pretty damn close. Our volunteer fire department was called out to assist in a search for a missing man. When we arrived on scene, we were informed that he was a convict out on work release and had not returned to prison. He'd told people that he would rather die than go back. They found his car on a backwoods road near a gas pipeline trail. He went missing on Wednesday. It was now Saturday. We split up into 2-person teams and headed out into the woods. We figured we would wander around for a few hours, not find anything, and then go home. Someone came and picked the guy up, and he was long gone. About 20 minutes in, our captain calls in on the radio. We found him. Subject deceased. We came up over the rise, and the guy was standing there, facing away from us. He looked like he was taking a leak. He had walked about a half-mile back in on the gas line, tied a rope to a small tree, and hanged himself. The tree bent over, so he was standing up. He asphyxiated instead of breaking his neck. He stood there, dead and staring, for 3 days. I work in a national forest in California. Every day, I drive on a very narrow, very twisty road that snakes through a river gorge. There are guardrails on some sections of the road, but the majority of it has a steep drop-off into the canyon. This summer, I was making my rounds, driving merrily up the road, when I see a person with a blue sheet over their head, think like a Halloween ghost costume, but with no eye holes, walking down the center of the road. I jaw drop and frantically honk my horn. There is no way I can swerve without driving off of the road. The person steps out of the way, just in time for me to avoid sideswiping her. Before I can pull over and radio for help, a truck comes around a blind curve and hits her, making her tumble down the ravine. After her body was retrieved and identified, we learned that it was a girl who had been missing for over a year. I used to work at one of the big desert national parks out in the southwest US, where a lot of mysterious stuff could happen in the middle of nowhere. One of my jobs was doing bat surveys, so my team would hike out to remote canyons and find caves and count/identify any bats we found inside. On one trip, we were in a remote canyon and found a cave halfway up a cliff face. We carefully scrambled up there, and once we got deeper inside the cave, we found a tent. It looked like a stereotypical hobo camp. The tent was one of those family car camping tents with a heavy tarp bottom, not a light backpacking tent. It was run down and partially collapsed, and looked like it had been trampled, and it was surrounded by black plastic trash bags, food that had been chewed by mice, ratty old clothing, and used toilet paper, and it was way inside a cave, a 3+ hour drive from the nearest tiny town, and a 3-hour hike from the trailhead. I use the term loosely because we were not even on a real trail. It looked like it had been there for a while. My optimistic hope is that it was an unprepared hiker that tried to do a hike that was out of their league. It was way hotter than they expected, so they camped in the cave to stay cool. And the long, nearly vertical hike back out of the canyon was way too much, so they ditched their tent and trash and food so they would not have as much to carry out. But on the other hand, this is a huge park with literally thousands of miles of backcountry that gets almost no visitation. In the year that I worked there, 10 people that I know of died in the park, and less than a month after this trip, someone died of heat stroke in the same canyon. People go missing regularly and are often never found. A lot of people try to hike across parts of the park and hitchhike and get dropped off instead of leaving a car that they have to hike back to. Once they are in the park, a lot of people set up base camps, then take day packs to explore even more remote side canyons where they can easily get hurt or in trouble without anyone knowing where they are. Whoever left their tent and food behind must have been in really desperate shape or got hurt without help and easily could have died out there without ever being found.